As Detective Clara Steele stood before the imposing gates of the Calloway Mansion, her colleague, Detective Smith, joined her. His footsteps echoing on the gravel path, Detective Smith glanced at Clara, noting the furrow of her brow as she surveyed the grand estate before them. "Quite the scene, huh?" he remarked, his voice low with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Clara nodded, her gaze fixed on the sprawling mansion. "It's unsettling," she replied, her tone tinged with foreboding. "A place of such opulence tainted by such a heinous crime." Smith followed Clara's line of sight, taking in the grandiose architecture and meticulously manicured gardens. Jonathan Calloway was a prominent figure in this city, he mused. To think that his life could end so violently. "It's a stark reminder that no one is immune to tragedy," Clara interjected, her eyes narrowing as she observed the gated entrance. "But it's our job to uncover the truth behind this grisly murder." With a shared nod of determination, Clara and Smith approached the gates, their footsteps echoing against the cold stone walls. As they crossed the threshold into the mansion grounds, they knew that unraveling the mystery of Jonathan Calloway's death would require all of their skill and resolve. The mansion, with its grandiose architecture and manicured gardens, had been the site of a grisly murder. The wealthy philanthropist, Jonathan Calloway, had been found dead in his study, a single gunshot wound to the head. As Clara entered the mansion, she was met with a whirlwind of emotions. Grief, shock, and suspicion lingered in the air. She knew she had her work cut out for her. With her keen eye for detail and sharp deductive skills, Clara set out to unravel the mystery behind the mansion murder. She exchanged a glance with Smith, their silent communication reflecting their shared understanding of the gravity of the situation. Smith spoke softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "This won't be easy, Clara. But we'll get to the bottom of this." Clara nodded, her expression determined. "Agreed. We need to be thorough and methodical." As they moved deeper into the mansion, Clara's keen eye for detail swept over every inch of the opulent surroundings. She noticed the subtle signs of disturbance, a misplaced vase, a scuff mark on the polished marble floor, clues waiting to be deciphered. Smith watched her work, admiration evident in his eyes. "You have a gift for this, Clara. It's like you see things that others miss." Clara offered him a small smile. "Years of experience and a relentless pursuit of the truth," she replied. "It's what drives me." Together, they continued their investigation, questioning witnesses and meticulously examining the crime scene. With each piece of evidence they uncovered, Clara's determination only grew stronger. As they worked tirelessly to unravel the mystery behind the mansion murder, Clara knew that she was facing one of the most challenging cases of her career, but with her sharp deductive skills and unwavering commitment to justice, she was determined to see it through to the end. Her first task was to interview the staff and family members present in the mansion at the time of the murder. Clara discovered a web of secrets and deceit lurking beneath the facade of the Calloway family. Jonathan's wife, Elizabeth, seemed distraught but guarded, hiding something behind her sorrowful eyes. His son, William, appeared nervous and evasive, refusing to meet Clara's gaze. Clara approached Elizabeth Calloway, who sat on a plush sofa in the mansion's lavish sitting room, her hands trembling as she clutched a handkerchief. "Mrs. Calloway, I understand this is a difficult time for you," Clara began gently, taking a seat opposite her. "But I need to ask you a few questions about the events leading up to your husband's death." Elizabeth nodded, her gaze fixed on her hands. "Of course, Detective I'll do my best to help." Clara studied her closely, noting the tension in her posture. "Can you tell me where you were when your husband was killed?" "I was in my room," Elizabeth replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had a terrible headache and decided to lie down." Clara's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "And did you hear anything unusual during that time? Any raised voices or sounds of struggle?" Elizabeth hesitated, her eyes darting away. "No, nothing like that. It was all very quiet." Clara made a mental note of the evasive response before shifting her attention to William Calloway, who hovered nervously in the doorway. "Mr. Calloway, may I have a word with you?" Clara asked, gesturing for him to join them. William hesitated before reluctantly taking a seat beside his mother, his eyes darting around the room. "I understand this must be a difficult time for you as well," Clara began, her tone gentle yet firm. "But I need to ask you about your whereabouts at the time of your father's murder." William swallowed hard, his hands fidgeting in his lap. I was in the garden," he stammered. "I needed some fresh air." Clara raised an eyebrow, sensing the underlying unease in his response. "Did you see or hear anything unusual while you were outside?" William shook his head, avoiding Clara's gaze. "No, nothing. It was quiet." Clara's suspicions deepened as she observed the guarded demeanor of both Elizabeth and William. She knew that beneath the facade of grief, there lay a web of secrets waiting to be unraveled. Clara delved deeper into the investigation, meticulously examining the crime scene for any overlooked clues. She discovered a hidden compartment in Jonathan's desk, containing incriminating documents suggesting financial mismanagement. Within the family business, could this motive have led someone to commit murder? Clara's heart raced as she carefully examined the contents of the hidden compartment in Jonathan's desk. Her fingers tracing over the incriminating documents nestled within. "Detective, what have you found?" Smith's voice broke through the tense silence, his eyes widening in anticipation. Clara glanced up, her expression grave. "These documents suggest that there may have been significant financial mismanagement within the Calloway family business," she explained. Her voice tinged with urgency. "Jonathan Calloway's death may not have been a random act of violence. It could have been motivated by greed." Smith's brow furrowed as he absorbed the implications of Clara's discovery. "So, you think someone within the family could be responsible for his murder?" Clara nodded, her jaw set in determination. "It's a possibility we can't ignore. We need to delve deeper into the financial records and see if we can find any links to the motive behind Jonathan's death." As they pored over the documents, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of a breakthrough. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to come together, revealing a motive that hit uncomfortably close to home. But who would stand to gain from Jonathan's death? Smith mused aloud, his brow furrowing in thought. Clara's mind raced as she considered the question. "Everyone with a stake in the family business could potentially benefit from his demise," she replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "But we need solid evidence to determine who had the means and the motive to commit murder." With renewed determination, Clara and Smith set out to interrogate the members of the Calloway family once more. Their questions more pointed and their suspicions sharpened by the revelation of the hidden documents. They knew that the key to solving the mystery lay within the tangled web of deceit and betrayal that surrounded the Calloway family business. As Clara pieced together the evidence, she encountered unexpected twists and turns. A secret affair between Jonathan's daughter, Emily, and a disgruntled former employee came to light. Clara pursued every lead with determination, uncovering a tangled web of betrayal and greed. Clara sat at her desk, surrounded by a flurry of documents and photographs, her brow furrowed in concentration. Smith approached, concern etched on his features. "Clara, any progress on the case?" he asked, his voice tinged with anticipation. Clara looked up, a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. "You won't believe what I've uncovered," she replied, her voice barely containing her excitement. "It seems there was more to Jonathan Calloway's life than met the eye." Smith leaned in closer, eager to hear more. "What do you mean?" Clara leaned back in her chair, organizing her thoughts before speaking. "It turns out that Jonathan's daughter, Emily, was having an affair with a disgruntled former employee," she explained, her tone tinged with disbelief. "And it doesn't end there. This former employee had access to sensitive information about the family business." Smith's eyes widened in realization. "So, you think this affair could be connected to Jonathan's murder?" Clara nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities. "It's starting to look that way. But we need to dig deeper. There's a tangled web of betrayal and greed at play here, and I'm determined to unravel it." As they pored over the evidence, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of a breakthrough. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fall into place, revealing a truth more shocking than anyone could have imagined. But why would Emily risk everything for an affair with a former employee? Smith pondered aloud, his brow furrowing in thought. Clara sighed, the weight of the investigation bearing down on her shoulders. Love, revenge, greed, there could be any number of motives at play here, she replied, her voice tinged with frustration. But we won't know for sure until we confront Emily and the former employee with what we've discovered. With renewed determination, Clara and Smith set out to confront Emily and the former employee. Their questions more pointed and their suspicions sharpened by the revelation of the affair. They knew that the key to solving the mystery lay within the tangled web of deceit and betrayal that surrounded the Calloway family. Finally, after days of relentless investigation, Clara gathered all the suspects in the mansion's grand hall. With a flair for dramatic revelation, she unveiled the identity of the murderer, none other than Elizabeth Calloway. Driven to desperate measures by her husband's infidelity and financial fraud. The grand hall of the Calloway Mansion was filled with an air of tension as Clara stood before the assembled suspects, Elizabeth Calloway, her children, and the former employee involved in the affair with Emily. Clara's gaze swept over each of them, her eyes steely with determination. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice commanding attention, after days of relentless investigation. I have uncovered the truth behind Jonathan Calloway's murder. Elizabeth's breath caught in her throat as she exchanged nervous glances with her children, the weight of Clara's words hanging heavy in the air. Clara paused for dramatic effect before continuing, the evidence points to one person, and one person only, as the perpetrator of this heinous crime. She locked eyes with Elizabeth, her voice unwavering. Elizabeth Calloway, you are under arrest for the murder of your husband. Gasps filled the grand hall as Clara outlined the damning evidence against Elizabeth, her motive driven by her husband's infidelity and financial fraud, her actions driven by desperation and betrayal. Elizabeth's face paled as she realized the gravity of the situation, her hands trembling as she struggled to find words. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the murmurs of the crowd. Clara remained resolute, her gaze never wavering. You may have thought you could get away with murder, Mrs. Calloway, she declared, her tone unwavering, but justice has prevailed, and you will be held accountable for your actions. As Elizabeth was led away in handcuffs, Clara felt a sense of satisfaction wash over her. The case of the mansion murder had been a challenging one, but with her keen eye for detail and unwavering commitment to the truth, justice had prevailed once again,